Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the April 2024 meeting of the Oldham County Planning and Zoning Commission. I am Greg King, Chair, and if everyone will please join me before we get underway in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody, and if everybody would also please join me in silencing those electronics for the duration of the hearing, please. Thank you. First order of business will be approval of minutes. Do we want to go ahead and get a motion on the floor? Ms. Jones? And Mr. Hampton with the second? Okay, so do we have any edits, corrections to discuss? Ms. Jones, is that you?
Yes. Okay. On page 2, under line 2, the second paragraph, it's just a correction on the name of the street. It says Joan instead of Jones.
Give us that location one more time, Ms. Jones.
The second bullet point, and then the second paragraph of that bullet point, where it says Clay Jones, and then it's got his address, 7506, and it says Joan Trace instead of Jones Trace. Yeah, it just needs an S there. Okay. And, okay, on the top line of page 4, it says family residences shall be limited to 20, and then it says 22. Not sure which is the correct number there.
We'll have to check the video.
Okay,
So how about if you adopt with the correction by staff on the correct amount? 20 or 22, it's close, but we'll fill it in later before we...
okay. And then
Have them signed.
on the same page, this is just a question. Is for the signs at Baptist Health LaGrange, is that R4 residential district there?
It is.
It is? Okay.
Been that way forever.
Okay, all right. Let's see. The next one is page 9. And it's kind of toward the bottom where it says, what type of security will this area have? And then it says there will be security around the bulk of the site, and there would be security cameras and a gate. Is that where they were talking about where, like, the bulk of the site would be fenced? Because the whole thing would have security, correct?
Yes, and I struggled with the word bulk, but that's what he said.
Okay.
It really, I was going to change it to perimeter. That's what
Okay.
he intended to say, but he said bulk.
Okay, but I mean, there would be security, I mean, so is that, where you said security, is that where he was talking about that there would be
Fence,
fence?
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, that's, he said, he really meant to say fence around the perimeter, and there will be security cameras and a gate. But what he said was security around the bulk of the site. So it's
Okay, so just
written the
keep
way
it
he
with what he
said
said
it,
it,
and I
okay.
didn't want to alter it. But what the intent was that it'd be around the property.
okay. And then page 10, and this is just a little confusing where it says, is the line of sight caused by the tree lines hanging over the right-of-way? Is it saying, you know, was the line of sight impeded by the tree lines, or?
Essentially, again, that's what he said, but it is impeded, right.
Okay, I just want to make sure if somebody comes back and reads this, that they
Yeah.
can understand what it's,
You know,
But
let me just, the testimony isn't in the binding elements. We make sure we really write the binding elements or conditions of approval correctly as they were stated, but we don't rely on the statements that were made as, it's part of the evidence and testimony, but we don't do enforcement of it, and there was no condition of approval that said it should be trimmed back or anything.
okay,
So, and that's off their site.
okay. All right, well, that's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Jones. Anyone
Mr.
else?
Chairman, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Marsh.
page 3, right there, findings and decisions, first line, Motion was made by Commissioner Nasser and seconded by Commissioner Marsh. My name is
March, yeah.
S.H. Thank you.
Spirit of the moment.
It's the only thing I look for.
All right, anyone else, please?
It was the March meeting,
There we go, right?
so we're close. Right.
All right, we'll do this by voice vote then. All in favor of approving the minutes as amended, as edited, please signify by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. And the minutes are approved.
And just for the record, we will fill in whether it's 20 or 22. We'll make sure that that's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Urban. All right. For the first docket of the day, before we get underway, Mr. Fox, do you have anything you wish to share with us?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I believe I have a significant conflict on this particular case, so perhaps I should step out.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. We'll catch you on the next docket item then, okay? Thank you, sir. All right, Ms. Edgar. Oh, let's go ahead and swear staff, please. Mr. Silliman, join us.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Ready? Let's go with the first docket item, please.
Docket PZ-24-006, an application has been filed by Creasy Mahan Nature Preserves Incorporated for the approval of a zoning map amendment and associated development plan for the Thrive Forest School on an approximately 1.657 acres of land located at 12501 Harmony Landing Road, Goshen. The proposed change is from CO1 Conservation Residential and R2 Residential to C1 Local Business District.
All right, and Mr. Fisher, you have staff's presentation for us today?
All right, yes. Thank you, Secretary Edgar, for reading that. Welcome, good morning. Ryan Fisher, Senior Planner with Oldham County Planning and Development. So as Ms. Edgar stated, this will be for a zoning map amendment and corresponding development plan for the Creasy Mahan Nature Preserve for the Thrive Forest School. So existing zoning, as she stated, this is in CO1 conservation residential zoning as well as R2. The school and everything that we're going to be talking about today is completely in R2 zoning, so we'll just clear that up a little bit. And then the proposed zoning is to go to a C1 local business district for just the portion of the property where the school is, and you'll see that here in just a second. So we're just going to be talking about 1.657 acres of property on the entire Creasy Mahan Nature Preserve. No site history. As far as the case history goes, with most of our zoning map amendments, these have quite the extensive case history, but we did start this whole process back with a pre-application meeting back in July of last year. The applicants then came back to us again in January with their plan. With staff. They then had their neighborhood meeting in February of this year. The TRC hearing was conducted on the 20th of March. Those minutes have been placed in your staff packet if you need to reference those at any point during the hearing. We did post this case to our Oldham County website on the 28th of March. Sent out adjoining property owner notices on the 4th of April. Posted a sign, actually 3 signs to the property on the 9th of April, and the public notice appeared in the Oldham Era on the 11th. So all of our notifications and procedures were handled in those timely manners. As far as the sign postings, I always try to provide you pictures to show that I really did what I said I did. And I posted 3 signs on the property just because of how large and how many ways in. So you'll see here 3 sign postings right here in front of the main building at Creasy Mahan going up to where the school is located. I posted another one as you look towards the school buildings, and then another one right at the current library building going up the hill. So 3 different signs were posted on the property. Here is an overhead view of the Creasy Mahan property. And then also your zoning layer showing here's where we're going to be looking at for the school completely in the R2 zoning. So the applicant is proposing this zoning map amendment to change that zoning from CO1 and R2 to C1 local business district on those 1.657 acres. As you can see in C1, this does allow for a permitted use for child care center, nursery schools, and also day nurseries. So a little bit about Creasy Mahan, in case you don't know anything about it. It has been a community treasure for almost 50 years and was established as a nature preserve back in 1975. The entire property consists of almost 160 acres and includes a nature center, woodland garden, playgrounds, trails, and paths. And here is an overall view of that Creasy Mahan property. As far as the Thrive Forest School, that was established on the property back in 2018 as the Louisville area's first nature-based preschool and day camp, and provides 3 to 6 year olds the ability to create their own learning path. Certainly applicants will probably tell you more about this school than I will, but just to give you a brief overview. So the applicant is requesting that change in zoning for that 1.657 acres of property, which will allow the school then to obtain state licensing, as well as open up avenues for additional grants and funding for the school. No other planned development on this property, no new improvements associated with anything that's currently on the property at this time. Everything will remain unchanged. They're just seeking the change of zoning for that state licensure, as well as additional funding and grant opportunities that may come forward. I did include this with your staff packet, just showing the plan that they do have for the school property. And so proposed binding elements, if we look at these, the approval applies only to the plans presented at the April 23rd, 2024 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. There should be no changes to the plan without review by the Oldham County Planning Commission and Engineer's Office, except for landscaping and lighting plans, which they won't need. And the plan must comply with all established federal, state, and county ordinances and requirements, and comply with all necessary easement restrictions. And as always, you all can add, amend, delete any of those binding elements if you choose. So this is a zoning map amendment. So this would be a recommendation to Oldham County Fiscal Court. On your staff packet, as I was reading over it, the denial motion does say the City of Crestwood, because I forgot that one. So just remember, if you do choose to deny, that is also a recommendation to Oldham County Fiscal Court, and then we'll have a separate vote for the development plan as well. I did pass out this morning 3 support letters that came in that you do have in front of you today, in hopes that you weren't going to make me read them, because they are quite lengthy. So I did provide those to you, and that's all we received on this case. I received no other phone calls or anything, any inquiries about the case at all.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fisher. Anyone else from staff? All right. Commissioners, questions of Mr. Fisher? Mr. Douglas, do you have something? Okay, let's go.
As far as the change request for the zoning map amendment, everything that's requested in C1 meets the qualifications under what they have existing now, parking, handicap,
Correct.
structure of the building, everything meets standard.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I have.
All right, Mr. Marsh.
Just for clarification, this property is all privately held? There's no county, state, federal ownership of anything here?
We'll let you ask the applicant that.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Marsh, anything additional?
No, sir.
Mr. Finney?
My understanding, there's no structures involved with this, correct? Building.
The structures that are there currently, and those should be on the plat. The school building is actively there now.
No new structure.
Yeah, no new structures.
Yeah, so it's already considered a school?
Well, and you can ask the applicant to clarify this, but it's a camp at this point. In order to be a daycare, it's a whole different process. In other words, for the camp, they don't need state approval. A daycare you do, and there are about 4 or 5 land uses that require a zoning verification from the planning office, beauty shops, nail shops, car sales, daycares. So when they want that letter from us, it has to be in compliance with the zoning.
Okay.
So since they're going to an actual daycare,
Thank you.
that's why we're doing this.
Commissioner Finney, this is probably the best picture to kind of show you the 2 actual school buildings are going to be up here. But in our meetings with them, they said pretty much the nature preserve itself is their classroom. So it's really kind of geared towards outdoor, and they'll be able to elaborate a lot more into what they do there on the property. So,
All right, anyone else? All right, if there are none, then we'll move into presentation from applicant. Thank you, Mr. Fisher. And as you approach, we'll need to get everyone sworn, and as everybody comes to the podium, we'll need, of course, to get your name and address for the record, please, okay?
Absolutely. So if you all will stand, they may not give any testimony, but we'll swear them in if they have
Okay.
questions.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Tanner Nichols, 400 West Market, Louisville, Kentucky. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. Thank you all.
Just for the record, you are their attorney.
I am their attorney, yes. So we agree with Mr. Fisher's report, and I think we have some slides, but there it is. Now, can I click to move ahead? There we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Perfect. Thank you. So I think the best way many times is to look at the pictures, but the first question I'll answer is, yes, this is currently privately held, and so this is a kind of I think of a kind of a great case scenario for local government, right? Is to have a privately held nature preserve that acts as almost as a public park. And really what's changed over the years is if you look at the map on the overhead now, are all the houses around the nature preserve. And it's nearby North Oldham schools. And so it's really a growing area, and this is kind of a treasure right in the middle of it. And so when you bring rooftops, like they've brought with all these homes and developments around, well, kids need activities. And prior to going to public school or kindergarten or going to meeting their education requirements, they look for activities, and this nature preserve provides that, and the Thrive School particularly provides that. And while there are buildings there, as he mentioned, really the school is the whole preserve. So they take kids out on hikes, and they let them look at the insects and animals and the water features and the trails. And one of the things that when I would look at that, even if it rains, right, they actually like taking the kids out in the rain to see the forest and to see the woodlands. And so that's what we're really asking for is they want to be able to expand some of those services for the kids there. And as part of that, they have to get state licensure. And then when they started looking at the state license, they said, oh, we've got to get the letter from Jim and the Planning Commission. And that's what we're asking for, is the zoning change. We're not changing any of the activities there. And so we're not building new buildings. We're not having to increase parking. And the building is used really for restrooms, or if a lightning storm were to come up. Obviously, the kids would go there, and they go to the building to check in when their parents bring them to check them in. So I think there may have been some additional questions, but we sent in a justification statement with this, with our original application. And of course, with the applicant, we think that the zoning change is justified, and it meets the comprehensive plan. We followed the procedures. We worked with the planning staff. Again, having a neighborhood meeting, it's pretty unusual that you get support letters and not people opposed to a zoning change. But I think most of the neighbors that we met with at the neighborhood meeting, they understand the need for this. And so I won't go through the justification statement, but I will point out some of the things that, again, objective LU1-1, we followed the review process. objective LU 1-2, since we're not changing anything, we're actually protecting the environment here. There's no new development in sloped areas. It provides connectivity with the nearby neighborhoods. So it's really about, this is really more form over substance. We're asking for a zoning change, but for the most, there's nothing changing at the property. So we're here to answer questions about maybe specifics about the school if you may have. But if you have other questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
All right, we'll get to those. Anyone else from your team wishing to speak to the commission on this, in this connection?
I don't think so unless they have questions.
Okay, we'll circle back to that. Is anyone else here present interested in speaking on behalf of this application? All right, seeing none, is there anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? Once again, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move into questions from the commission. Commissioners, what are your questions? No questions? Ms. Nasser?
Just a little more clarification. How is
Okay.
it currently being used? And you said there won't be any change. Is it changing towards a preschool, or is it already kind of a preschool setup?
Well, it's quasi, right? It's the Thrive School is in active right now. It's so parents do drop their kids off, but for the state licensing, we have to say that Thrive School is becoming a daycare preschool per the zoning definition here in Oldham County. In other places, right, there's more expansive definition, but for this, that's what the definition meets, and that's why we're coming here.
Well, and I don't know, maybe Tavia can explain this, but I said earlier that it's more like a camp today
Yeah.
versus an official daycare, and it will have to be licensed, and in that licensing, you have a specific number of children that can be on the property, and that's I think the
The
distinction.
distinction. Sure.
Please, let's get your name and address for the record, please.
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Tavia Cathcart Brown, and my home address, is that what you'd like?
Work address.
My
is
work
fine.
address is 12501 Harmony Landing Road, Goshen. And thank you for considering us today. Right now, one thing that the state and we recognize at Creasy Mahan Nature Preserve is there is a crisis in childcare, affordable childcare as well. So that's when this came to our attention, and we had families coming to us. We have over 60,000 visitors that we are serving at Creasy Mahan Nature Preserve in our county, with the vast majority being Oldham Countyans and also people coming in from other counties. So basically, what we started, exactly as Mr. Urban said, we really are providing more of a camp. It's a half-day drop-off and pick-up, and we realized quickly over COVID in particular, the pandemic, that parents wanted more. And we can't provide more because of being restricted more like a camp. Plus, we realized as well, to better serve and give confidence to our families, we want to pursue licensure by the state because it really gives a checks and balances, and we're all about being transparent, and we want to provide that. Right now, of course, we're following all the rules with Oldham County Health Department as a camp, et cetera, but we really want to increase the transparency by going through the state. By doing that as well, we will have access to additional funds. 33% of our children who come to our Thrive School camp are scholarshiped, meaning that we give financial aid to 33% of our students. And as a public charity, visitor supported, that's a high number. It's really not sustainable. So we're hoping by getting licensed by the state that they will provide us some funds, which are sitting there. And so we want to hopefully be able to access that to better support our educators as well as our families. So that's really a great question.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
Thank you.
Ms.
Mr.
Nasser,
Chairman.
anything additional? Mr. Marsh.
Follow up on that a little bit. We've used the term school quite a bit, but we're not talking about setting up a private school here. This is a daycare center?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes, thank you for clarifying that.
thank you.
All right, Mr. Douglas.
This might be more in line, but I'll ask the question first. So there'll be more than 12 or more children?
Probably our goal is to serve the needs of the families. And if we have more families coming to us saying, will you help take, basically we're going to be offering a daycare is what it is. And if we have more families, then we're going to consider it. However, we really like the intimacy of our groups, and right now our ratio is 1 educator to 6 children. And so it's far better to keep it small, especially in an outdoor environment, because of the risks that are inherently involved with educating kids in a forest. So our goal is to still keep it really intimate, but if more and more parents come to us asking for more daycare services, we will evaluate that. But again, our goal is to keep it an intimate forest experience.
So, Mr. Urban, if they had kept it in R2, could they have done a conditional use if they had 12 or less?
No.
No?
No. That's why they're here, because in your staff report, it shows that there's a listing of what's permitted in various zoning classifications. And in R2, it's not permitted.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Finney.
I think my question is answered, but basically, we are solving a technicality to changes from a camp to a daycare.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Further questions? All right. Thank you all. All right. So, in the absence of opposition testimony, we are at final statement for you. Anything else you wish to add?
Thank you all very much.
All right. Thank you for your presentation. Mr. Urban?
So this is a recommendation first for a zoning map amendment. You're going to recommend to Oldham County Fiscal Court whether or not you should approve or deny the zoning map amendment on a portion of the property as described in their survey. You have heard evidence and testimony. You also have a justification statement that Mr. Nichols referred to, and that's in your staff report. So the proposed motions, as always, start on page 2 and 3. Either to recommend approval or denial. And then we'll do the development plan after you consider the zoning map amendment separately.
Thank you, Mr. Urban. Anybody questions? All right, floor is open. Mr. Elder.
For docket PZ 24-006, I move that we recommend approval to the Oldham County Fiscal Court of the zoning map improvement as it complies with the objectives of the comprehensive plan as listed by the applicant in their justification statement and on the evidence and testimony provided today.
Thank you, Mr. Elder. Mr. Baxter.
It's a good motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Mr. Marsh, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will move into roll call vote. Ms. Edgar?
Ms. Davis? Yes. Mr. Douglas?
Yes.
Mr. Elder?
Yes.
Mr. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Hampton?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Nasser?
Yes.
Ms. Walzer?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Edgar. And the motion to approve the zoning map amendment to recommend approval to fiscal court carries on a vote of 9-0. And now we will move into the development plan. Mr. Urban?
Yeah, the next consideration is approval or denial of the development plan as presented. It's fairly simple. There are only 3 binding elements. I didn't hear anything other than the ones that are in your staff report. The first one is the approval applies only to the plan presented at the April 23rd, 2024 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. The second is that there should be no changes to the plan without review by the Oldham County Planning Commission and Engineers Office. And the third is that the plan must comply with all established federal, state, and county ordinances and requirements and comply with all necessary easement restrictions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Urban. Any questions, commissioners? All right, floor is open. Mr. Marsh, is that you?
Sure. I move that we accept the items as read by Mr. Urban.
Approve the development
Baxter?
plan with
The development
binding
plan
elements.
with the binding elements, yes.
That's adequate, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Baxter. We have a motion on the floor. May I have a second? Mr. Hampton, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will move into roll call vote. Ms. Edgar?
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Ms. Walzer?
Yes.
Ms. Nasser?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Hampton?
Yes.
Mr. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Elder?
Yes.
Mr. Douglas?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Edgar. And the motion for approval of the development plan is carried on a vote of 9-0. Thank you all. All right. Okay. Is anybody going to get him? Okay. Thank you. You're supposed to shake them down a little bit when you open the door, right? Thank you, Mr. Fox. All right, we good? Primarily for you. We good? All right. All right, we'll move into the next docket item. Ms. Edgar, will you please read the docket?
Docket PZ 24-007. Application has been filed by Stuart Frankenthal for a site plan review with a waiver for a proposed bank and coffee shop on property located at Buckner Crossing Track 3, LaGrange. The property is zoned PUD Plan Unit Development.
Thank you, Ms. Edgar. And Mr. Fogel, you have
Right,
staff's
yeah.
presentation.
Good morning, Brian Fogel, Assistant Director, Oldham County Planning Development Services. Just prior to this, passed out to you guys a couple things. The top sheet was meant to be included in the staff report that you guys were given last Wednesday. It's the page 7 of the traffic impact study. That's on me for not making sure that the copier picked that page up. And ironically, it's probably one of the most important pages of the traffic study that I have confidence in Jim Silliman that he'll address this, in that it provides the conclusions of the traffic impact study. So again, apologies for not making sure that was included with your staff report, along with the other 6 pages of the traffic impact study and all the comments from the technical review committee. The second thing that's under that are some colored renderings of the proposed Fifth Third Bank building. The applicants provided that to us after the staff reports were submitted to you all. In your staff reports, you basically have the black and white version. So this is the colorized version, just to more accurately represent what the building would look like. So the request as it was read is for a site plan review and a parking standards waiver for proposed Fifth Third Bank branch and Starbucks coffee shop on Track 3 in the Buckner Crossings development, which is basically the Buckner Kroger, and there's also a McDonald's there right now. In terms of housekeeping, we did post this on our website on March 28th. Adjoining property owner notices were mailed on that 3rd of April, and a legal advertisement appeared in the Oldham Mirror newspaper on the 11th of April. An aerial photograph of the site, and the photos we took for the staff report will reflect what's out there, but the developments are recent enough on the site with the Kroger and the McDonald's that they don't show up on the aerials. So where we're at is Buckner, exit 18. Where this red push pin is at is where the proposed outlet is for the Fifth Third Bank and Starbucks. The parcel is outlined in red right here. The McDonald's this past year was constructed right here, and the Kroger was constructed right here. The zoning in the area on the north side of 71 is either planned unit development, which allows for a mixture of commercial and residential uses that you all have approved in the past. And then on the other side of 393, it's IPD and commercial, reflecting Tri-County being there. And I think in the past year, you guys heard a site plan review request for a Wawa service center right here at the intersection of 393 and the extension of Commerce Parkway. Some photographs of what's out there currently. This is standing along Commerce Parkway, looking back towards Highway 393. There are two entrances to the site. One has a traffic signal, which is what this one is right here. The second entrance is down here by McDonald's. It does not have a traffic signal. This is a photograph looking along Commerce Parkway back towards the city of LaGrange. The signalized entrance to the site is located right here. And the actual outlet where the bank and coffee shop are proposed are located right along here. So you see the Kroger in the background. And over here to the right, you see the McDonald's. And then just a few more images of the site, the outlet from the Kroger parking lot. And then the outlets are located right here, and this is the entrance along McDonald's where there's not a traffic signal, so the traffic signal would be located right here. In terms of the site history, this property has been before you guys, basically dating back to the late 90s. In 1998, as part of the construction of Commerce Parkway, all the property basically from 393 going up to LaGrange was rezoned from I-2 heavy industrial to industrial park district. In January 2006, an applicant presented to you all a recommendation to change that zoning from IPD to a planned unit development called Buckner Crossing. In April of 2015, you all approved a development plan basically for the commercial center where Kroger, McDonald's, and the proposed bank and coffee shop are located at. What's significant about that, in your approval of that, you had a site plan for the proposed Kroger. So you approved the Kroger, but you didn't know what was going to go on in any of the future outlots. So one of the binding elements that you all put on that is that any of the future developments on the outlots have to come back to the full planning commission for review and approval versus it just being a staff function. In November 2015, the minor plat was approved that created the 1.19 acre parcel that's before you guys today. And then in March of just this past year, on March 20th, the applicants appeared before the Technical Review Committee for technical comments. The technical comments were included in your staff report, and the applicants primarily have addressed any of the concerns that were raised at the TRC meeting on March 20th. So the requested site plan is for a 1.19 acre parcel that would be proposed to be divided into two parts. So there would be two outlots that would have a joint access with their parking area. The one lot would be Track 3A for a Fifth Third Bank branch. It would be 1,900 square feet in size with 18 parking spaces. Track 3B would be a Starbucks coffee shop for 2,421 square foot building with 19 parking spaces. In terms of our parking standards, the number of parking spots that are proposed on Track 3A with the Fifth Third Bank, by our ordinance, they would be allowed 10 parking spaces. And it's based upon the square footage of the building. They're proposing 18, requiring a waiver from you all in 8 parking spaces, and I will let the applicant speak to this, but their intent is to have reciprocal agreements between the two users to where the additional 8 parking spaces located at Fifth Third could also be used by the customers that are going to the Starbucks coffee shop. Going to show you some of the site plan here. This is the overall site plan, just to orient you. The Kroger is located here, McDonald's right here, the signalized entrance is here. This gray footprint here is the proposed Fifth Third Bank, and this gray footprint here is proposed Starbucks. They have submitted a landscaping plan showing that they've got the mass of their landscaping along the perimeter, basically, along Commerce Parkway, and then the 2 entrances to the site. And then a lighting plan showing that they're satisfying the requirements of our zoning ordinance for lighting. So the Fifth Third Bank branch, located right here with the 18 parking spaces on the perimeter, an entrance here on the internal drive, a connection here with the Starbucks and a connection here with Starbucks. And then these are the renderings that they provided showing you what the building would look like, the front building elevation, and then each of the sides. And then the Starbucks is proposed to be on Lot 3B right here, signalized traffic signal right here, and then images of what the Starbucks would look like with the front of the building, and then also the front of the building is repeated here, the side of the building with the drive-through, and then the rear portion of the building. So in summary, it's a site plan review request for the construction of a Fifth Third Bank branch on one track, and then the construction of a Starbucks coffee shop on the other track with a request in the number of parking spots on the Fifth Third Bank lot. And that concludes my portion of the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Fogel. Mr. Silliman?
Good morning, Jim Silliman, Oldham County Engineer, 100 West Jefferson Street. And Brian, thank you for your confidence in me to address the traffic study. Appreciate that. As your county engineer and stormwater coordinator, of course, my 2 primary tasks in review of this are stormwater and the traffic impact study and traffic impact. So with regard to the stormwater, the proposal is part of a common plan that's greater than 1 acre. So even if the individual parcels are built and they're less than an acre each, we still would require the Oldham County Stormwater Management and Erosion Control Plan to be obtained from our office, as well as the KYR 10 permit from the Division of Water. When we're reviewing those plans, typically we will review for the post-construction stormwater runoff. In this case, it's been simplified because the Kroger development actually designed and constructed the stormwater basin to accommodate all these parcels, McDonald's and these 2 we're looking at, so there'd be no additional stormwater detention required. So that makes it a little easier. With regard to the traffic analysis, I think I'll recognize this is a challenging analysis when you look at the overall development for the future in this area on Commerce Parkway. I look at more immediate plans that are on the horizon, including the Allen Lane improvements and realignment, 393 realignment, and the ramps at exit 20 that are going to be open very soon. So. But with that, I think the best assumptions were made in this traffic impact study, and I'm just going to review some of my thoughts on that one. The traffic impact study is an update to the study that was provided for the February 2023 McDonald's Planning Commission hearing. And also there was a subsequent update to that dated May 2023. The primary reason for this update was because those 2 previous reports included a 10,000 square foot retail center on this outlot. So with the change to the bank and the coffee shop, we wanted this to appropriately reflect the trips generated. Because it's an update to an earlier study, and you might have noticed that some of the movements were actually a little different than what's actually out there. Previous plans included this intersection, the non-signalized intersection, to be a right-in, right-out. It was actually approved and constructed with left turns in and out. I didn't request the traffic engineer or the applicant applicant update that study to reflect that, because I don't think it would have negative impacts on the results, and didn't feel like they should waste their time on that. I should also point out that the ITE, the Institute of Transportation Engineers Manual, where we obtain the trip generation assumptions for these, provides different various scenarios for peak hour trip generations. It appears they actually utilized in this the most conservative, or we'll say worst case scenario, trip generations. So this does appear to be a very conservative analysis of the traffic. When I compare the level of service that's indicated in the no build comparing the no build to the build scenario, which is on the sheet that Brian provided you with the conclusions, and actually that shows an improvement in one of the directions, likely because of the added turn lanes or the traffic signal. Then also comparing the level of service that's shown now and comparing that to the previous level of services that were indicated in that February and May approved plans. And then also considering the turn lanes that have been constructed and the traffic signal that's installed. I'll summarize it by saying that I concur with the traffic engineer and the applicant that there are no additional improvements required for this at this time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Silliman. Anyone questions for staff? Mr. Hampton?
I know you're not a fortune teller, but what are the chances?
Can you get a little closer to that mic, please?
What are the chances, I'm speaking specifically to the Starbucks at this point, of having a line that ends up being out in causing conflict out in the regular street?
Because there's a great deal of queuing length provided with circulation within the site. I don't have a crystal ball, but looking at the information they provided, because the level of service analysis includes the longest queue length, it doesn't appear that it would be an issue. And I think also if that was identified, I think the developer would try and address it, because they don't want backups within their site.
I'll probably have another question for the applicant. Thank you.
All right, anything else, Mr. Hampton? All right, anyone else? All right, seeing none, we will move into presentation from applicant. As you approach, we'd like to go ahead and get anyone who's going to give testimony sworn in.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
And let's gather your names and addresses as you each approach the podium, okay? Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Camille Hessen. I'm with Heritage Engineering. Our address is 603 North Shore Drive in Jeffersonville, Indiana. And Brian Vogel pretty much summed up most everything with this project. The site is...
One sec.
Usually the attorney makes the first part of the presentation.
Oh, okay.
We just want to make sure there's counsel here. Yes, Scott Brinkman, 6009 Brownsboro Park Boulevard, Suite D, Louisville, 40207, representing the applicant, Jazz Realty Company, LLC.
Thank you. Formality satisfied.
Okay, thank you. And should I
Yeah.
defer? Okay.
Throw the reins back to her is fine.
Thank you. As I was saying, Brian pretty much summed up the development for us with his presentation. And we're going to be presenting for Tract 3, like he mentioned, of the Buckner Crossings development. It's a PUD plan development. This is the development plan. It subdivides the Tract 3 into two other tracts, Tract 3A, which is 6.61 acres, and Tract 3B, which is 0.58 acres. And as Brian mentioned, 3A would be the proposed Fifth Thirds Bank, and Tract 3B would be the proposed Starbucks. Tract 3A does have, we are asking for a waiver for the additional 8 spaces for that Tract 3A, but between the two combined tracts, we are not exceeding the maximum allowable parking, and we do have a reciprocal access or reciprocal easement agreement between the two lots for parking. This is a rendered version of our landscape plan. We are utilizing some existing landscaping, which is on the two entrance roads of the site. And it's consistent with what's out there. The proposed landscaping will be consistent with what's out there today on the McDonald's and the Kroger sites. And then this just summarizes our drainage on site. As mentioned before, Tract 3A will be draining through the Kroger development and to the basin that Kroger has provided. These are some renderings of the proposed Starbucks building. And then this would be the Fifth Thirds Bank building. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
We'll come to that. So is that the end of your presentation?
This is it.
Okay. Formalities again. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this application? All right. And anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Being none, we'll move directly into questions from commissioners. Who has questions? Mr. Finney.
I have a question for the applicant on the shared parking.
Sure, let's get your name and address.
Stuart Frankenthal, 707 Skokie Boulevard, Suite 405, Northbrook, Illinois. Let me give a little history so we can answer your question I know raised before. I think it's very important to look at where the entrance is. We spent a lot of time with these two tenants worrying about your issue, which is Fifth Third worrying about them being blocked, Starbucks making sure they have enough. Internally, historically, it's about 12 to 13 cars when it's really backed up. Starbucks requires 16 spots, and that's what we had to do to be able to do this. And so we moved the entrances around on multiple occasions. If you look, the entrance is on the bottom. Okay, so people coming into Starbucks have two options. They can come in the entrance that's not signalized, come across, but then there's 16 spots there, or they come underneath. And the main key to it was that when they're leaving, they have an entrance exactly out, going back to 71. So I think we did a really good job of, there were entrances in the front when this was first presented to them, and we just tried to figure out how to address that issue so that we wouldn't have that, because it's very important to Starbucks that they also don't have traffic going up. So if you see, the entrances are on the bottom and allow for 16 to 18 cars for stacking. The normal average in a busy Starbucks is 12 to 13, so we added about 50%. So that's issue number one. The second part was parking. Most of it is drive-through, but there is the issue of parking. We were limited by 10 spots in the size of these lots. So we have created a reciprocal easement agreement for garbage, for utilities, for all of those things, because they both wanted to have their own specific lots versus being in a shared building. All right, that's sort of their new motto. So that's why we did what we did, and we have addressed all that. And it's really so they each can share parking, but we still did not go over the total number of what this acreage would be. So we're not asking for additional parking. We're really saying it's better for you all to understand we have a waiver that the two sides can share some parking so that they don't have the issue of, if there is a coffee group that wants to meet in the morning, they have the ability to do it. So that's what we tried to do. So we didn't ask, we're not asking for more parking than what this site would allow, just that there be a reciprocal, and want you to understand how that's working. So I hope that answers your two questions.
Not exactly.
Okay, so
but
go ahead.
We're getting there. Your entrance for your Starbucks is over here on the east side of the building, correct?
I'm bad on directions. Yeah, I think, here we go. Okay.
Kind of where your arrow points here.
Here we go.
That would, the
So
others.
here's the entrance, there are two entrances.
No, in other words, where you would enter the building to go inside for service.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is
Right
in here.
in there. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. So your additional parking is on the north and the south side of the Fifth Third Bank building. In other words,
Correct. Correct.
You're sure?
The Fifth Third has asked us to designate 7, right, Scott, 7 or 8? 8 parking spots across from their entrance so that they will be designated where I'm looking right here. So they will have designated parking spots because, again, they don't have a lot of, again, it's mainly drive-through. They don't have a lot of people going to banks in there, but they have requested those to be specific as well as the handicap up here. Okay? And their entrance is up in this area. Hope that helps.
So
Okay.
are you using the ones on the north and south side as your parking spaces for Starbucks?
They're basically, yes, exactly.
Okay, so in other words, the people that park up here would have to walk all the way around the building to get,
They'd probably, the people in the north would probably walk through this
Correct.
safety entrance over to, Camille, the entrance is here, correct? Am I right? Right by the handicap parking spots, yes.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So this seems to me quite inconvenient, especially in bad weather, to walk from either the north or the south side all the way around to get to the front, to get to the,
It's sort of overflow. What I would say to you is it's more overflow parking. If you see here, the Starbucks has 19 spaces,
Up front.
okay, of parking. So based on their statistics, they want to have the reciprocal, but I'm not sure that they have 19 people parking there at any given time, to be honest with you. Because they've told us that over 83%, 85% go through the drive-through lane. So it's a relatively small.
Along
number.
those lines, Stuart, will the employees be required to park in those residual spaces over on the bank?
We have completed the Fifth Third lease. We're working through all of those details. I can't say that they're going to be required, but I'm assuming that's what probably would happen on some of those spots is that that's down here closer where we're doing shared trash, that probably they'd have some of their employees park down here. And so then the employees would park down here and then walk into the entrance. That's sort of my belief. I have no way of proving that, but that's what I believe would happen. Again, they have, 4 to 6 employees at a time. So,
Sir, did you say the trash was behind the bank there? Could you point to
yes,
that?
exactly.
Right down, okay, I
Yeah.
see it.
So the trash is, we're doing shared, again, when you take the premise that they wanted it to be 2 separate lots, we had to come up with solutions, and that was the solution. And because we wanted the entrance to be down below, at one point it was over on the Starbucks side, and we decided that wasn't the best place for it. And Fifth Third agreed because they want to make sure that they have access to their drive-throughs and that their drive-throughs wouldn't be blocked. That they said, okay, we'll take the garbage onto our lot. There's been a lot of back and forth between these 2 tenants, trying to find solutions that would work for all of them.
and what would be your seating inside? How many people would you seat inside the building?
You got to come.
I need you up here at the
Yeah,
podium,
come on,
please.
I don't, yeah, it's,
I apologize. I'm not sure what the exact number of seating is for that proposed Starbucks, but the parking is based on, I know for restaurants, they do base their internal requirements for parking on seating that they have in the building. So I would assume, that the parking provided, those 19 spaces, is adequate enough for the seating that's in that building, if that's.
it's only 2,400 square feet, the building, of which I would say probably, I'm just guessing here, because we don't have the final construction drawings at this point, 800 or 900 is probably kitchen and, service area. So you're talking about maybe 1,000 or 1,200 square feet of actual seating and restaurant area. Yeah. I don't know how many seats does McDonald's have? Do you know?
And what it is based on square footage, not the number of seats.
Right.
And then the other thing to remember, they're asking for a waiver of the maximum, not the minimum.
Understand,
So they're
yeah.
providing more parking spaces. So these extra spaces that you were kind of questioning about the distance from the door, those are extra, they're not trying to.
I understand, it just looked like, are we getting into where they've got parking for the number of people that want to have seating for, and then are we getting to,
I would think that Starbucks,
Can you get closer to the
I
microphone?
would think that Starbucks bases their 19 required parking spaces on how much seating that they would need inside the building. And then Oldham County has their requirements for
So
parking.
you're
additionally,
satisfied with it?
Which we're satisfying those, yes.
okay, thank you very much.
And I also would say that satisfying both of these tenants going through this process was not easy, and finding the solutions that they both would accept, and they're satisfied with this, so.
Thank you. Further questions? Mr. Hampton?
What has been the, let's see, how do I want to say this? There's another Starbucks 200 feet away. What's the situation with that?
The Starbucks, the Starbucks that's in the Kroger is a license agreement with Kroger. So that's staffed by their Kroger people. In many places across the country, there will be Starbucks in Targets, in Publix, in these stores. Corporate has a philosophy that they want to be able to have, again, you're right off 71. They want to be able to have people that are ability to drive through and not have to go into a store.
I understand, and I know it's not really comparing apples to apples, but I haven't noticed this situation before. I'll just put it that way. I haven't seen an in-store. I understand what you're saying.
Mr. Hampton, can you put this into the scope of land use for us, please?
Well, I'm trying to be sure there's justification when you got another store 200 feet away.
Well, that's not
Understood.
really
It's a
our
business
purview.
decision?
Yeah.
So, land use?
Yeah. It's just on whether or not the site plan is according to our standards and the waiver is acceptable or not. Whether it's in conflict with somebody else's business, we can't base our decision on that at all.
Okay.
Hey, Mr. Douglas?
I'm not sure if this is for the applicant, but I'm going to propose it anyway. Time and hours of deliveries for your Starbucks, and has there been any consideration what time of day deliveries are made? Because if, I believe somebody brought up a question and there was discussion about how many vehicles are in the parking lot waiting for the drive-through. So if you have 20 vehicles waiting in line to get a cup of coffee and you have a delivery truck for Starbucks, where do they go?
That question I would not know how to answer, because that's a Starbucks operational question. My job is to provide them a facility, and they'll have to operationally address that. I can't really answer that question because that's not really within my purview.
So my next question then will be, has there been a reciprocating agreement with Kroger for extending parking in their lots for overflow?
The only there's not a reciprocal agreement. There is a reciprocal access agreement with Kroger, but there is not a agreement. The trucks would have to deliver on lot 3B. They're not going to deliver onto the main roadway. So they have to get close enough to the store. So I'm assuming that they will. Their delivery area is more than likely down here, and so they would make arrangements to address that. So the delivery door more than likely is going to be here, correct?
I would think it would be down.
Go down here.
I can't say exactly where that delivery door is, but like Stuart had mentioned before, there's been lots of discussion between the two tenants of the tracks on the coordination of how the layout is done. And I would think that Starbucks has considered delivery, since that's a big part of their business, and their access to their building in this site. I don't know exactly where that delivery door is, but I would guess where Stuart has pointed out that that's probably the best suited location for delivery.
Well, that was my concern because you're showing on the elevation,
Yeah.
that's the patio area.
Yes.
Is that generally where deliveries take place, in the patio area, or is it behind the building? Because my next
back
question was
here.
going to be the elevation design, is the rear of the building facing Commerce Parkway?
Yeah.
And it could be then, because we don't know, okay, they've given us their elevations. We don't have construction drawings at this point, but it could be that their delivery door could be up in the top here.
It could be up there too, whereas the truck could kind of sit here in this parking area. Then you have this lane
Can you
that
get closer to the
accesses-
microphone, please?
I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm bad with this today. Their truck could sit within this parking area and unload deliveries here, but there is this bypass lane which accesses that drive-through around here. So the delivery would not be blocking the drive-through.
Does staff have any input as far as where the elevations of the front, the rear of the buildings face? I mean,
You probably don't remember, but I'm actually a member of the Architectural Review Committee for, this is part of a PUD, and I have not thoroughly reviewed these, but we do have input into the materials and the Architectural Review Committee, which is not part of what the Planning Commission does, but again, as part of the PUD, I'm on that Architectural Review Committee. I'm not sure I'm understanding your question.
my concern is traffic.
Well,
If we have a reciprocating agreement for the use of 3A and 3B, but there's not one for Kroger or McDonald's, if people decide to park in one area or the other, how are you going to?
we've never had anybody call us in any development in Oldham County regarding somebody parking on the wrong piece of property. If I can
Okay.
answer it that way. It's never been
Well,
a
that's-
code enforcement issue. We don't get calls. I know this is going to be testimony, but there is an escape route. If you look at the top of the Starbucks, there's an arrow right there in the middle. A delivery vehicle could easily park there during deliveries if there was traffic. That's a required escape outside of the, to get out of the queue line if you wanted to at the last minute. So I think there's adequate space in here. I'm going to use the Crestwood Starbucks as an example. That's probably one of the tightest sites I've ever seen. There's a bank next door. We never get a single phone call about truck traffic or congestion. I mean, people are concerned about going out onto 329. That's important, but internally, we don't deal with code enforcement regarding deliveries at all.
I don't think
And let me answer this because the head engineer said to me, they do not do deliveries during their busy times. So they require their suppliers to do it on their non-busy times.
That's the answer I was looking for, because we've had other commercial or entities come in and basically tell us the hours of deliveries. We've asked them before, and this is the only time I've never heard anybody say, I don't know. And you put it on record, so that I'll live with that. Thank you.
He corrected my answer. Thank you.
And just as, I wanted to clarify something anyway. The staff report says that Stuart Frankenthal is the applicant. Actually, Jazz Realty is the applicant.
correct.
Stuart is a
Manager of
Jazz Realty. He's the owner of the property my
entity owns, Jazz Realty, my entity owns this property.
but not Starbucks or the bank.
Right.
So just for clarification.
Be very clear, we will be leasing these to those two corporations. We have a lease that is completed, not signed, but completed with Fifth Third. The way this works with Starbucks is we have to get this approval first, and then we then are presented with a lease. We have a letter of intent with them. They've had it reviewed and approved, but until we get this planning commission approval, they won't go further with this step. And that's why this step is so important to be done at this point.
Thank you. All right, commissioners, further questions? All right,
Thank
we've
you
reached
all.
the end of that. We are going to dispense with rebuttals. Any final statement from the applicant?
No, sir, just want to thank the chairman and members of the commission.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Urban.
Okay, let me get back to my staff report here. So on, the first thing you have to consider is the parking waiver, because without it, the site plan can't be approved. On page 3 in your staff report, there's the technicalities of the parking waiver. Again, they're asking for a waiver of the maximum amount of spaces. We usually don't get those, but it is a waiver request of 8 spaces. On page 5 in the staff report, there's a proposed motion for either approval or denial of the parking standards waiver. And although this is somewhat redundant, we'll go ahead and include, if you're inclined to approve the waiver, the parking lot waiver shall only apply to the site plan review application considered at the April 23rd, 2024 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. And again, if you approve that and you approve the site plan, there'll be the same binding element, condition rather. So first thing is your parking waiver.
All right, thank you, Mr. Urban. Commissioners, questions, discussion? If none, the floor is open. Ms. Nasser.
Motion to approve the parking waiver for docket PZ 24-007. This for the request to add 8 parking spaces to the maximum of 18. Seeing as this complies with the adjoining lot and the shared agreement that they will be making between Lot 3A and 3B to provide additional parking for overflow between 2 commercial buildings, I approve of this parking waiver.
Thank you, Ms. Nasser.
I would also like to incorporate
Yes.
the conditions of approval as stated by Jim Urban.
Thank you.
And I did forget to mention that in their application for the waiver, they do have an explanation, of course, between that and your evidence and testimony that you heard today.
Thank you, Mr. Urban. Mr. Baxter?
Ms. Nasser, I assume that last comment by Mr. Urban is also incorporated into your motion?
It is.
Then we have an adequate motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Baxter. We have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Ms. Davis? Discussion, questions? Mr. Douglas?
The reciprocating agreement between the 2 lots, are they going to be part of the condition of approval of the site plan or in the parking waiver?
Good question. You could include that as a condition of approval, that we get a copy of that when they'll do a minor plat on this property, and when they submit the minor plat application, they can submit that parking, cross-access parking agreement.
And let the record show that the applicant signifies agreement. Okay?
So we're
Right.
back to Ms. Nasser?
I make that motion to include that in binding elements.
And is that included as a part of the second?
It is. Oh.
Very good. We're good to go, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right. Any further discussion? Further questions? We'll move into roll call vote. Ms. Edgar?
Mr. Douglas?
Yes.
Mr. Elder?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Ms. Walzer?
Yes.
Mr. Hampton?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Finney?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Nasser?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Edgar. And the motion to approve the parking waiver is passed on a vote of 10-0. All right, Mr. Urban.
Mr. Chairman, I unfortunately forgot to ask a question of the applicant. Can we open the floor? It's a very simple question.
Motion, please.
Motion to open the floor.
Motion and a second to open the floor. Please move, or do we need to vote on this? Voice vote signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. All right, Mr. Urban.
Thank you. For the applicant, throughout this entire site, both Kroger, McDonald's, and now this development, there are wayfinding signs to direct traffic back to I-71. And I apologize that I forgot to ask, will there be any wayfinding signs associated with this development site?
Absolutely. They're already there. I actually drove the site this morning, and absolutely there will be the similar signage that has been showing people, and yes.
Yeah, like coming out of the Starbucks
Exactly,
as an
yes,
example
exactly,
on that
yes.
rear
Yeah,
entrance.
Yeah,
They'll-
right where, so they'll know to turn left. Absolutely. That was
Thank you.
our intent, absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Urban. Thank you.
Okay,
All
so,
right.
that's all I had.
That's all you want. Do you
Appreciate
want to frame
that.
up the motion?
Thank you. So on page 4 in your staff report, there's proposed motions for either approval or denial of the site plan. There are binding elements, or conditions of approval, rather. First, there shall be no significant changes to the site plan as presented on April 23rd, 2024, Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing without review and approval of the commission. The second is that the landscape plan and lighting plan must be submitted and administratively approved prior to the issuance of building permits. And I'm going to include in that there be wayfinding signs in that landscape and lighting plan. And then the third is that the site plan, landscape plan, and lighting plan must comply with all established federal, state, and local ordinances and requirements at the time of the approval.
Thank you, Mr. Urban. All right, Commissioners, discussions or questions? Everybody clear on where we are? We're good. We will open the floor for motions.
Okay.
Ms. Nasser, is that you?
That'd be me.
Thank you.
I make a motion to approve the site plan as presented today for docket PZ-24007 on the basis on testimony and evidence that it does comply with the planned unit development as stated in the Oldham County zoning regulations. It is compatible with the theme and use of the area and its character of what is planned for the Buckner Crossing planned unit development. We shall also include the binding elements as stated by Jim Urban that have been agreed upon by the applicant.
Thank you, Ms. Nasser. Mr. Baxter.
Good to go, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Mr. Marsh, thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, we will move into roll call vote. Ms. Edgar.
Mr. Hampton.
Yes.
Ms. Davis. Yes. Ms. Nasser.
Yes.
Mr. Marsh.
Yes.
Mr. Douglas.
Yes.
Mr. Finney.
Yes.
Ms. Jones.
Yes.
Ms. Walzer.
Yes.
Mr. Fox.
Yes.
Mr. Elder.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Edgar. And the motion to approve the development plan for PZ-24-007 has been approved on a vote of 10-0. Thank you. All right. Mr. Urban.
We got notice from KIPTA, which is a regional planning agency, that on September 17th of this year, they're going to have a training session. We've been to them before. It is an all-day training session. It complies with House Bill 55. I don't know exactly who their speakers are going to be yet, but they did put us on an early notice to save the date. So September 17th, and it will be at KIPTA in Jeffersontown. Well, we'll send it out later. It's KIPTA in Jeffersontown on Commonwealth Avenue, but once we get details of the training, it is a little bit off, way off, so once we know, we'll send that out. Make sure you're, just wanted to get it on your calendars.
All right, and Mr. Fisher?
We do have cases for you next month, so same time, same place. I think it's the 28th, maybe, is the date that strikes in my mind. There will be no, and we haven't had a chance to discuss this yet, but there is no TRC or SRC meeting on Thursday.
thought
solely
we were
because-
gonna have one.
Well, we didn't have the notice put out in time, so,
Yeah.
and we really don't have a lot to bring to you other than the stuff from last month. So we do plan on doing that in May, though, so let you know that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fisher. Anybody else? All right, and if I will get a motion to adjourn? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.